Hello out there, everyone. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to the Musical QuaranStream with Glen and Bree. I am Glen.
I'm Bree.
And this is the Musical QuaranStream where we talk about musical theater twice a week and have been doing so ever since March.
Yes, we are your internet mom and dad doing a musical talk show.
Yes. Don't you love the new Broadway shows this season? Oh, wait, they all closed down, but weren't they wonderful before they closed down?
Making me sad. um, yeah, we've been doing this since like St. Patrick's Day, and looks like we'll be doing it at least until probably the new year.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give a bit of a disclaimer as we get started. I was lying down after working all day, and I have a little bit of a headache, but we will persevere because the show must go on.
Yes. Why must the show go on?
Because it must. We are actors. We know no
Yes.
other way.
Yeah, so
It is the way.
yes, that is the way. We have been doing. We've done several different topics within theater, starting with like trying to talk our way through shows that we were once in.
This show has been under many different iterations.
Yeah.
Some of them more short-lived than others. What we've been doing pretty much 75 to 80% of the time is pitch ideas for musical theater. Some more specific than others, but basically just using the time to think creatively about what type of shows can kind of be presented, hopefully in the future when theater will be reenacted.
Yeah. And we started off, let's see. We're starting a new theme this week.
Brand new theme.
Yes, brand new theme. We're coming out of fringe show pitches where we were like, let's talk about things that can be a little bit smaller cast, smaller requirement and everything. And then we were like, well, you know what seems like a really good topic to slide into from the fringe size show is the type of show that tends to do really well on fringe theater, which is shows that discuss social topics.
Yes, we had a big debate about social issues versus social topics, and I think we kind of decided issues sounded like there was always a problem to be solved, or maybe it was not a normal part of life, and so we kind of went with social topics.
Yeah, social topics. Basically, the things that the editorial segments on the news really like to start off with. Statistics show that more and more these days, that sort of thing. Yes.
Yep. So the very first one, like I thought of, was now granted, disclaimer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a single parent, but I feel like in my group of friends,
mm-hmm.
I guess in our group of friends,
yeah,
I know a lot of people who were remarried or single parents, and I don't think that there's too many examples of that being a complex issue, I guess. And maybe like feel free to tweet at me or correct me in the comments or in the chat. But I think my two examples that I was thinking of was like dear Evan Hansen. Evan Hansen's mom is a single mom, and it's very sad. The dad left, and she feels like she's not doing a good job, and it's very tortured. And then I thought, well, the Music Man, I know Marion's not necessarily a single mom, but I think she kind of is. I think like it's very heavily implied that like her brother is really not her brother, and I think that the ending of that story really was like, oh, it's better that she gets to be with a con man than be on her own.
Yes.
And so it's one of these things that I was like, I really feel like I'd like to see maybe something addressed more complexly where you can kind of feel like there are successes and there are challenges, because I feel like it does lean a bit towards abstinence only scary, but I think there's a lot of like really powerful families and parents that we both know who thrive being a single parent, or try to figure it out with their community. And I kind of was thinking of That's a really bad example, but like Women on the Edge of a Nervous Breakdown.
Yeah.
Like I like how they kind of like take each person's little stories and kind of dive into like kind of complex things. I thought, well, that could be an opportunity for something that's, you know, entertaining and maybe like a bit more like uplifting, or at least like a piece of solidarity, more so than
Well, it's something.
hand wringing and pearl clutching.
It's something we've discussed before with just in general representation.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that representation can't always just be about the struggle.
Mm-hmm.
From time to time, representation has to be about the joy. It has to be about victories or just about living a life that you enjoy. And hello, Bristol. We see you in the chat room. Thanks for joining us on the show. And, you know, my little moment of white, cisgendered, straight male privilege was in trying to promote today's show. I didn't get a YouTube link out because I didn't think of what I wanted to do until very, very late before the show is going to go. But I've been trying to more and more find YouTube videos that link into the topics we're talking about and get those out there to kind of promote the stream and encourage people to come in and see what we're talking about.
Yeah, we'll eventually have more of our own ads up soon, hopefully.
Yeah, so I went out looking this afternoon to see if I could just Google up the information on who was the first single mother on television, to be like a main character on television, not a guest character or a very special episode or something like that. Who was the first single mother to front a show? And the earliest show tagged on the IMDb for being a sitcom, not a drama, but a sitcom, with a single mother as the main character was, I'm going to mess up the title of the show probably, which is bad because it's just the main character's name. But it was Julia in 1968, starring Diane Carroll. That is the earliest that the IMDb lists for like a sitcom fronted by a single mother. Now, of course, single fathers were all over television history. And we were discussing that earlier, that when I saw 1968 Julia starring Diane Carroll, I was like, it can't have been 1968. There has to have been a show before that was about, at least about a widow raising children on her own. And then Bree pointed out to me that, no, yeah, it's totally believable that it was as late as 1968 that we actually got that. Because a lot of the things that single fathers on television dealt with in terms of their life and raising a child, for starters, they softened the single fatherhood by making them widowers, so there was no separation, no divorce, that sort of thing, which was a very taboo topic for a very long time in entertainment. But also, typically those shows were about the fathers having to work in addition to raising the kids, and having to find love again, go out and start dating again, and that sort of thing while they had kids. And those sorts of things probably would have gotten the television stations burned down if they had tried to do them with a mother who was a widow, wouldn't they?
Well, I think that we just kind of talked about like some of the major things facing, women in the 50s and 60s were things like, really draconian laws that, sometimes in many cases like would not permit a woman to divorce without really severe, financial and, very punitive like repercussions. There was still like that whole like policemen and priests were trying to get people to stay together even though it was abusive, and women couldn't get credit. And so, we were kind of like thinking like, well, surely there were examples of it, but it was probably, closer to Marion the Librarian, where oh, I go back and I live with my mom and I have to try
Yeah.
to like be a single lady and find a single guy who can kind of help support me. It was definitely a lot harder. And I think like the earliest I could think of, you know, my parents were around in the 60s. I don't know if you know this or not, but I wasn't. I mean, you young kids might think I was, but I like One Day at a Time. And even like I think the modern One Day at a Time, it's definitely not reframed of, oh, she moved in with her mom to be better supported, take care of her kids. It was her mom moved in with her, and she's basically a nurse and taking care of everybody. And so I feel like, to me, it made a ton of sense that there wasn't anything in the 50s. I think the 50s was still that nuclear family and two parents, and dad worked. And while maybe reality didn't necessarily mirror that in case of every single person alive, I think there's definitely roadblocks in America, economics and finance and legal issues that probably made it a lot harder to show that type of representation of what a single parent would look like in a female-led home.
Mm-hmm. And
what do you think? Tweet at us. Comment.
Tweet at us. Comment. You're there in the chat room. You can chat with us. But it is sort of a fascinating question to look at that, because that has been a topic pretty much as long as we've had the concept of family and parenthood. That there have always been single parents for one reason or another. But for it to be such an unrecognized, or if recognized more as a tragedy or a dramatic element than something that can be genuinely a story of like a family that loves each other and takes care of each other, sort of thing. Even today, there tends to be, I have noticed, a tendency when you're dealing with a story that is single mom raising the kids, to be like, to veer toward the story of, oh, I'm the mother and I'm raising the kids, but really the kids are raising me. You know, where it's like the story is always about how the kids take care of all of the stuff for the mother. Which can be, a lot of times it's played off as a very nice family dynamic these days and everything, but it can be a little bit judgmental. Let's see, Julia, but didn't watch it. One day at a time. Yeah, which I don't know if you guys have seen the reboot that was on Netflix. It is really good. It was really well done, I thought. But yeah, it is. I think it is a topic that it would be very interesting to explore in terms of like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at least in kind of more, I don't want to say traditional or popular, but I can think of many more examples in media where, you know, having kind of a nuclear family is preferred and the kids are okay and blah, blah, blah. And I feel like, you know, everybody's doing all the best that they can anyway. And, you know, it doesn't necessarily really, I guess, extend that kids are always going to be okay or untraumatized or, you know, whatever, just because they are in one type of home or a different type of home. So I feel that, you know, kind of leaning on, well, gosh, isn't being a single parent so hard? And, oh, I feel so sad for the kids. And I mean, I think especially in a modern context, I think we know a lot of single parents who have really fantastic communities, whether that's a theatrical community where, you know, they bring their kids to rehearsals and have a huge family of actors and technicians that kind of support them, or they have really kind of a nice community within like the town that they live in, or their family's really supportive. But I feel that, you know, it's kind of one of those things like if the kids are loved and supported, then I think everybody's going to turn out just fine. I think necessarily maybe staying in a situation where, you know, you're not a great couple or it's not a healthy environment, that's probably less good, instead of like choosing to, divorce or,
Mhm.
maybe getting married again just because you feel like you have to. So I don't know. I think it's kind of an interesting concept to explore. I think a lot of times, like you said earlier, single moms in particular are highly maligned, or it's used
Mhm.
as a trope. Like, gosh, how many 18th, 19th century things have you seen? Well, my mom was a single mom, and she was
Yeah.
also a hooker, and I'm traumatized now, so I murder people. And you're just like,
Yeah.
now granted, we watch a lot of murdery shows from the BBC,
Yes.
but I feel like, while some things are a bit more fun for drama, I think that art can also have this side where we celebrate, what
Yeah.
life is, and kind of, like you said, the good times and the warts and all. And I think that having kind of a piece like that might be nice. Now, granted, there's a lot of other pieces out there. Like,
Mhm.
I'm thinking in particular, like Menopause the Musical,
Yeah.
where, it's very niche. And I think a lot of people do pay money to see it, do come and see it, but it's not, I think, as many people would say, oh, this is high Broadway art or anything
Yeah.
like that. But it doesn't mean that there's not a place for that where people can feel understood and people can see themselves kind of reflected on stage. And it was just something that I was really kind of like thinking about, that, like, me, even as a non-parent, that's something that interests me, because we don't see so many examples of, like, yeah, everything's, it's just equally hard, it's just equally easy, and there's hard times and bad times, and
Yeah.
there's also big successes. And I don't know, I think, like, I'm just very interested in the breadth and depth of human experience, and particularly being stuck at home in a pandemic, you want to be able to see more things that are unlike you. At least that's my
Yeah.
experience. And that was just something that I thought would be very entertaining, and I'd watch, I'd listen to that musical.
Yeah. Well, and first off, let me just say, Carl mentioned in the chat room, single dads on television: Ben Cartwright in Bonanza, Chuck Connors in The Rifleman, and yeah, that's one of the things, is that the history of television is full of single dads, either explicitly because the mother passed away, or they just conveniently never mention what happened to the mother, but we know that they are out of the picture. But it's interesting that you can find them all through. The one that I came up with talking with Brie earlier is My Three Sons was a single father show. There was also My Two Dads, which I guess was
Full House.
two dads. Full House, which was what, three dads. But they were all still single dads. They were just single dads together. But I think a topic that's interesting to get into now, with looking at single parents in the modern day, is the we're seeing more and more attention, and positive attention, paid to the idea of co-parenting, which is what happens when you have a couple who splits in terms of their marriage. They no longer wish to be married to each other, but instead of a conflict over who gets the kids, it is, we are still their parents, we're still raising them as parents. It's just, we're not, mommy and daddy aren't married anymore.
And that's probably for the best.
Yeah.
And
and we're starting to see more positive representation of that on television. For a while there, it was treated as kind of almost as kind of a joke. Like, writers tended to treat it as, oh, that's not something that really ever works out. But now, no, we're starting to see people treat it as, oh, this is actually a solution that might be best for everyone. So, which I know that's co-parenting, that's both parents are in the picture, but it is still a form of single parenthood. And I think that I like the idea of, like you said, women on the verge of a nervous breakdown being able to find multiple stories and tie together multiple stories to show multiple experiences of this. One of the things that occurs to me thinking about the history of single fatherhood on television is when you had a single father raising children, they were never genuinely, or very, very rarely, were they raising the child actually on their own. They either had a live-in nanny or I guess
maid or sister.
You had the Andy Griffith Show, Sheriff Andy and Opie and Aunt B. Aunt B was really there to be the caretaker.
That was a mom surrogate.
Yeah, there was always a mom surrogate. It seems like most of the stories of single women raising children, though, have focused on the idea of the woman having to do everything herself. One Day at a Time is not like that. One Day at a Time has the mother in the picture as well.
Mm-hmm.
The mother.
Well, and Schneider,
yeah.
He tries. Trying his best.
Yeah, he's trying his best.
Often misguided, but you know.
Yeah, so I think that for a musical about single motherhood, I would watch something that sort of told the experience from like multiple.
Well, and I said Parenthood as well in my initial pitch. Like it doesn't have to just be
motherhood,
gender.
right? Yeah.
The other thing that I kind of think of when I think of a musical style, like we talked about Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, Octet by Dave Malloy, which came out 2 years ago, maybe. All the years are blending together, yes. 2020. But it was about internet addiction and different things. So I think they had like gambling and little games and shopping and anything that you can do online. And it was a cappella, and that's why it's called Octet. There's 8 people, and they're all based on the major arcana of the tarot cards. So if you like go and try to find this thing, you'll see, I think it's a picture of the Fool.
Yeah.
I think something like that. Like, obviously, I think that that's a much more artistic interpretation, and you wouldn't want to kind of like rip off that idea.
Right.
But I do like the idea of like a support group or something like that, because I feel that that would allow people to kind of have like this open conversation of this went great, this didn't go great, and kind of like building like a community or friendships, because I feel like that's at least what I'm hearing from a lot of people really missing from pandemic is the missing parts of community.
Yeah.
You know, I think people are really realizing it is hard to do everything all on your own. And even though, you know, I'm not taking the burden off of that. Like, you are still doing things on your own, but even like when you're doing them on your own outside of a pandemic, there are still things like after school childcare that you can maybe do through your school. There's meals that you can get. So it's like even like little things that were helping you but still not lifting the complete burden of it makes that burden even more difficult when you are doing every single Zoom call from at home and you don't really see another person for 3 or 4 months. And I mean, I feel like you've kind of had that experience a little bit more with kind of like your work experience. And I think isolation is a huge issue that we're going to need to overcome, and we're going to need to find those like parts to connect. And I think that that's why for me as an optimist, I still have a lot of hope that theater can do that. Yes. And I think that we have to do it safely, of course, but I feel that telling these stories and focusing on anti-isolation and building community, you know, whether there are people that are kind of in an immediate family that help single parents, or whether like a group like this would help single parents.
Yeah.
That's something that I think that we could all kind of explore and understand, especially coming off the tail end of a pandemic.
Yeah. I do like the idea of a support group, because that's a very, very community space to have all of these stories in. And I think that I would definitely, if I was working on a show like this, if I was like, hey, I have all of the money in the world, I will produce her show, I would be like, yeah, let's start from the idea of a support group. We might evolve it into something else, but that's a very good starting place for it. And I think if you moved on to anything else, it would still have to be that sort of like, it is a resource specifically for single parents. Now, that could turn into a therapist who works with single parents, and their office with the characters coming sort of in and out.
Or like a cocktail party after school or
a cocktail
something.
party after a PTA mixer.
Right.
Yeah, which that, depending on how big your cast is, that could be a lot of fun of having the other parents be like, Dave, Cindy, we want you to get together. And it's like, we're doing all right. You don't have to be like, you need someone in your life.
Also, how heteronormative.
Cindy's like, I'm dating Carolyn.
But yeah, I think something where, I think I just want to see more positive representations in media. I feel that, I guess, like, personally, nobody's life is going how we expected our lives to go, right? And I think that when we share ourselves authentically with our community, I think that that's when we can really, start to see where we want to go and who we want to be. And I think that's the same way with everybody, but I feel that in my own personal experience, like, not having a child to worry about, I can be a little bit more selfish and focus on myself more. I think that there is a bigger responsibility when being responsible not only for your own growth and mental health, but also of tiny people who are exactly like you. That's huge. And I think that, we want to celebrate people who are trying to do what's right and do what's best. It's like, kind of as Frozen said, do the next right thing, and I think that that's a big thing that I think single parenthood has consistently been stigmatized. And as someone who wants to create work that destigmatizes all parts of humanity, that's kind of what I wanted to do with bipolar disorder and my mania. So I feel like this would be another kind of social topic that is worthy of destigmatization, and talking about how people can kind of build communities or find people or find support if they need it.
Mm-hmm.
Or they should just have communities anyway. We all need each other.
Yes.
It's like that is unfortunate when you consider everybody in our community and whether we want to need them or not. But we are a social animal on this little planet, and we all need each other.
Even introverts need another person or two from time to time,
Yep. And I realized we got through this pretty quickly because we didn't even talk about things we were watching, things we were doing.
We didn't. We launched into the pitch.
Went right in. So we're going to do a little backwards today. So you kind of heard our ideas. Obviously, there's no songs or no story. Just, kind of floating it out there. Something that I think would be very interesting to, maybe write about, do some interviews, something like that. But I mean, I kind of hate to say, like, I haven't watched a whole heck of a lot. As far as theater goes, I kind of got sucked into this is our Broadway show on our cruise ship from the Disney cruise ship line. So I watched the Rapunzel one, and it was okay. I can kind of see why it's not a Broadway show just yet.
Yeah.
It's fine. I mean, everybody worked really hard, and they're all really talented, but was it, like, my favorite one? Probably not. And I really like Tangled. Tangled is awesome. That's one of my favorite. And I really like the Vikings. And my favorite little part is, and Vladimir collects ceramic unicorns.
Unicorns. Yes. Which it is. Disney has been, as a corporation, on their entertainment division, has been handling the pandemic fairly well. On their parks, they could maybe have held off on reopening the parks. I understand the financial situation, but it's not safe for the parks right now. But I was reading earlier this week that Disney has had a bit of trouble because I think they said they reported losses of $5 billion this past quarter because the movies that they planned to have in theaters couldn't come out in theaters. And that's pretty huge. That is not a rounding error as far as Disney is concerned. Usually when you hear they lost money, it's like...
Well, getting back to things I watched.
Yes.
I was like, I'm not going to say I don't feel sympathy, because I certainly feel sympathy for average, everyday people who work for that. But also, not all of us are going to make a profit during the pandemic.
Yes.
Some of us are really suffering.
And when individual people are told, well, you should have saved for the hard times, that goes for corporations too. You should have saved for the hard times.
Yes. And I think that I am more concerned, based on that news, of how that will affect current movie making and current movie industry, because it is such a monopoly. It does take a big chunk out. But the other things I've been watching is, I don't know if it's come up or if it hasn't come up. I saw Coriolanus through the National Theater, and I think it probably already happened. I hope not. I really wanted to see it, but I kind of watched the preview for that, and so I was like, I couldn't really tell whether it was like a new thing or an old thing. So if you do know, let me know, because I'd like to watch it. We watched Umbrella Academy, which was really fun. We tried to watch Perry Mason, which I had a hard time. Like, I was like, so if you are an 80s kid, you probably watched Perry Mason at your grandmother's house. And she was like, oh, he's so handsome. He's such a nice man. He fights for the little guy. And so I thought, well, I like Miss Fisher, and there's a lot of things I like about, like, Law and Order, Crime and Punishment, and Murder, and, like, the Depression era. It's just one of these things that I had a lot of high hopes for. And granted, I only watched the first episode, so if it gets better, let me know. But it was not really my cup of tea. I was expecting maybe a more, I hate to say charming anti-hero and growth and development. And I just felt like after watching an hour of the first episode of the season, I didn't know if I could really kind of persist. I wanted that episodic Law. Like, I wanted a little Nick and Nora. Like, I kind of had a certain expectation, and I don't mind Grim and Gritty. I certainly have watched a lot of Grim and Gritty reboots, but it was not my cup of tea. But then we switched to Umbrella Academy and promptly watched 4 episodes. So we're like, oh, this is really good. And I've had to kind of, like, resist watching that, because a lot of people said they watched it in 2 days, and so now I'm trying to be like, no, space it out so I can watch another 4 in another day.
Yes. But yeah, it is. I share a lot of Bree's feelings about the Perry Mason reboot. That I know a lot of people have said, "Oh, the new Perry Mason, it's so wonderful because it's really like a great modern film noir and everything." And I'm like, yeah, I don't have a problem with let's do a great film noir story. I have a problem with calling that Perry Mason.
And he's so unhappy, and I'm already unhappy. I want happy. Or at least, like, I mean, what I think I like about Umbrella Academy is, like, they're all angst-ridden as well, but they have silly moments, and they have, like, bright colors, and, like, you can kind of get a laugh every now and again, whereas, like, I mean, there was kind of a nice scene with him and, I guess the law secretary, where you kind of saw, like, oh, maybe this is going to be like the TV show I remember. And I think that was, like, it. But, like, there's only a few places where you thought, oh, yeah, this is, like, the beginning of the hero. And you're, like, really excited. And you're like, no. And that was, like, 10 minutes out of the whole hour and a half. Or whatever.
It is. It's, like Bree said, I don't have a problem with Grim and Gritty reboots. But I feel like when you reboot something, even if you're going, let's take this funny thing and make it grim, you've still got to maintain the core of the original concept. Otherwise, you're just profiting off of putting the name on something that it isn't.
And I think we can all appreciate, like, all the work that everybody did for that show. But it's like, unfortunately, sometimes some things just aren't your cup of tea. So maybe somebody out there really enjoys it. And, I think all the actors were super talented. But I wanted a little more Nick and Nora, the Thin Man. I wanted a little bit more, kind of that really seductive aesthetic about film noir.
Or,
she walked in like a dame, looking like a dame.
Or even just the ability to laugh at itself a little bit. That the original Perry Mason movies and the Raymond Burr TV series and everything, that if you've never watched the original Perry Mason movies, those are heaps of fun. They're sort of like Nick and Nora light. But it is my takeaway after the first episode of Perry Mason ended was I was like, I would be perfectly happy to watch more of this series if it wasn't called Perry Mason. If it was treated as a completely new thing, I would be like, yeah, I'd be happy watching the rest of this. Or at least trying another episode. But with the Perry Mason name on it, I kept looking for the things that I liked about Perry Mason. And I didn't see them in the first episode. So
yeah, I when we got done watching it, I said I feel a bit hypocritical after pitching reboots and different versions and stuff like that. But I don't know. I was like, I feel like the things I really like about a lot of the crime or legal stuff is that witty banter, or like you said, that the sparks of joy. And I think that we're just kind of expecting, like with HBO in particular, HBO is really good at doing grim and gritty and sexy. And I was like, I understand like the Dust Bowl and like the Depression were not always sexy, but like, you know, if it's going to be HBO, I think I was expecting a little sexier, a little more joyful and sexy.
I said
a little.
I said it's one thing for the main character to not enjoy his sex life, but then for the TV show itself to not enjoy his sex life either felt a little bit off.
Yeah. Well, and it started very promisingly as well, because it's like, it's if you haven't seen it, I mean, I hope this isn't a spoiler for anybody, but, you know, spoiler alert just in case. It starts with like a dead baby, basically, and you know, that happened in the 20s and 30s, but it was very like, you know, a lot of the movies that we would see kind of discussing it is very sanitized, and so kind of being on HBO and kind of like being that dark so quickly, it definitely set a tone. But I felt it was very exciting because it's like, oh, like maybe we're gonna see the birth of Perry Mason, where it's like he got dishonorably discharged, but it was because he, you know, was so true to his morals and values, he disobeyed orders, so he was really a good guy. But, you know, and we just never really saw that. And I feel like if it was another show on another network and half as long, I think I could have forgiven it and kept watching. But I think when you get a whole like hour for your very first pilot, and not a whole heck of a lot happens, that's really hard. And even the small smidgens of, you know, his legal acumen and like his, like he was questioning people, so there's like little bits and pieces that you could almost see it, but it's like when it was like 5 minutes out of 60, I think that was really hard for me to kind of like continue being excited to watch it. Like it my enthusiasm couldn't carry me to episode 2, unfortunately.
Yeah, I almost hate to say this because it's a completely different like franchise, completely different character and everything like that, but this version of Perry Mason not only made me miss Perry Mason, it made me miss like Eddie Valiant from Roger Rabbit. Because Eddie Valiant was really good for being like a hard-boiled noir character who had all of the story and the sort of rumble through life, but still was able to find like fun moments. Now, granted, he had a cartoon rabbit. But...
the heck, it even like made me miss like the Maltese Falcon. You know, it's like almost any other like, you know, noir detective that you can think. Or what is it? The Big Sleep. The
Big Sleep.
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways of kind of doing, you know, maybe not the most likable detective. And I mean, I also kind of was yearning for a return to episodes, because I really like Monk and I really like Psych, and I realize that that's not like a one-to-one correlation with that or anything, but I kind of wanted here's this horrible mystery and it's going to be wrapped up in an episode or two, so that we could see maybe 10 mysteries. But it's kind of the I guess the model that is very, very popular in shows nowadays, where you're going to get a whole mysterious arc.
Yeah.
And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's just I feel like we've been seeing that for the past 10 or 15 years. Kind of starting with things like, maybe like Nip Tuck and True Blood and Carnival or whatever. But I kind of wanted like an episodic, like he would solve a mystery once an episode.
Well, I
once
think
every other episode.
I think it's a lot like, I think it was John Rogers, the creator of the television series Leverage, who a couple of months back was talking about, if you're a writer pitching new series ideas, get used to this is the series you're going to pitch. Mm-hmm. And he was like, it's going to be an hour-long drama with sarcastic humor and a 3-year story arc. You're like, don't try to pitch episodic. Don't try to pitch a 1-season show or a 5-season show. He's like, you get 3 seasons, hour-long drama, that's it. And the hour-long drama has to be it has to be soap opera structured, so that the story is not told in a single episode. The story is told over the course of the 3 years. He said, that's it. That's what the streaming services are looking for right now. And I kind of agree with him that he said it's just funny that America built its entertainment industry in part off of the vast variety of stories and experiences that we told on television. And now we have somehow managed to boil it down to, this is the single format everybody needs to do.
Yeah, and I think it's like we've seen the same problem with like YouTube algorithms and stuff like that. I was listening to, I'm going through all my NPR podcasts, so, if you'd like to listen to NPR podcasts with me, please do. I like things like Throughline and It's Been a Minute and Code Switch, Invisibilia, Embedded, Hidden Brain, and I'm just getting to Planet Money right now. Mm-hmm. And I was listening to, I'm catching up, so it's a little older, but it was talking about the Hollywood Blacklist, which was not the McCarthy one that you might be thinking of, but it was the one that happened, I guess, in the early 2000s, where all these, I guess, entry-level producers shared around their perspective scripts of like what they thought of it or anything, but they were saying, it kind of came about because they pitched the idea of Lars and the Real Girl, and they said, well, that's really hard to bring to your boss because you could say this is a really great script, but I feel uncomfortable pitching it because it's about a man that falls in love with a sex doll.
Yeah.
And so number one, I thought that was weird because I was like, why would you feel bad pitching that to your boss? I mean, you didn't write it. He's not going to think you're weird. And if it's good, they'll make a lot of money. So I didn't understand that part. Although, I'm not I'm clearly not part of the Hollywood elite as you check out my lovely couch that I've covered in a thing that I've knitted. But I thought that it was so weird that they wanted to create this spreadsheet of scripts that they all liked so that they knew what was stronger to pitch and what was weaker to pitch. And while that's like a really interesting tale, I think, of statistics, I was like, well, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I would be like, this is good. Yeah. And maybe that's why I don't work in Hollywood, is because I have that attitude of like, I feel like I know what good is. Well, and that's very like stuck up with me. Like, I would just be honest, but it's like, I feel like if you really like musicals or movies or media, I feel like you kind of just know what you like and what you don't like, and be it that there's so many different types of people out there, I think like, why not just take a chance? And like, the worst that could happen is like, oh, I don't work here anymore, but clearly people go work other places. Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm speaking about stuff I don't know anything about. So if I have offended everybody's job in Hollywood, I'm very sorry. Please don't tweet at. No. I'm not coming for your job. I'm on the other coast and it's a pandemic. Please just be like, you are ignorant and don't be any meaner.
I am coming for your job. This woman does not speak for me. But well, yeah, it is an interesting thing about the whole process of pitching the film and getting the film through and things. And the Blacklist, has been a thing for a while, where you'll hear about this script was at the top of the Blacklist. Mm-hmm. And it was basically the stuff that my understanding of it. I didn't listen to the same podcast Bree did. But it's basically, these are the scripts that everyone in Hollywood loves. Nobody's buying it.
Mm-hmm.
Because for one reason or another, they see it as like, it's toxic to touch that film. Or just, we don't know how we would fit that into our schedule even. Apparently, Ride Along with Ice Cube, was it? Which turned into this huge phenomenon. That film, that screenplay started circulating in like the early 90s and didn't get made until around 2000, I want to say 2013, 2014, somewhere around there. And it topped the blacklist most of the years that it was circulating because everybody was like, this is a great film. Nobody in Hollywood wants to buy it. And then you have stories like the Robin Hood that came out a while back with Russell Crowe in the lead role. Was it Russell Crowe? I think it was Russell Crowe.
There's been a lot of Robin Hoods.
The Robin Hood that again tried to be a very gritty, realistic, historically accurate version of a story that is in no way historically accurate to begin with, was based on a screenplay that had been on the blacklist for a long time. That was supposed to be the Robin Hood story told from the point of view of the Sheriff of Nottingham. Where the Sheriff of Nottingham, we were going to learn, was actually like this dedicated civil servant who was just trying to keep order in an England where people hated the king. And Robin was going to be like this drunken lout whose legend was bigger than the actual man sort of thing. And then it stayed on the blacklist for a long time and finally got picked up by a studio that then took that script and said, yeah, we really like everything about this, except we don't like the fact that Robin Hood is portrayed as not being really Robin Hood-y, so let's make him more like a traditional sort of Robin Hood story. And also there's this whole thing that you've told it from this point of view of the Sheriff of Nottingham. That doesn't make any sense. Let's tell it from the point of view of Robin Hood. That's who people want to see. And the whole thing changes from what people had passed around and really liked.
Oh, because this is a musical theater,
Yeah.
stream. All I can think of is, no one mourns the wicked. Like, it's very wickedy, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And it's, and this sort of, the interesting thing is this sort of thing does happen in pretty much all over the entertainment industry. But, yeah.
But that's everything I've been watching and listening to.
Oh.
There's probably been a few more other things in there, but we can talk about them on Saturday if I forgot.
What is the channel we just started watching on YouTube about music? Sound Feel.
Yes. Okay, so I got into, if you're looking for some other PBS things, I'm trying to support my national public, whatever. I feel like those are going to be the first things to go. I'm getting very nervous about them. I can't really donate money to them right now because I'm trying to keep my own head above water. But I've been trying to do the NPR. I've been trying to do the PBS. And so PBS Digital Studios. And It's Okay to Be Smart and Eons and Storied with Monstrum, which is like one of my favorites. And I'm so sad there's not any more episodes because that is something I burned through. Monstrum with Dr. Emily Zarka. Oh, it's so good. I love it. They also have this thing called Soundfield.
Yeah.
And it is phenomenal. Like, as somebody who's very interested in going back to school to do a music PhD and look specifically at musical theater, I love it. And I feel like every single time, like, I see, like, their content pop up, I'm just like, I could watch. I could learn about that. I could watch that.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal show. Like Bree says, it really pulls together serious thought about like what is this genre of music, what goes into making a song that feels like this. One of the early episodes that I watched that I really liked was one popped up in our recommendations that was like, what happened to dubstep? And that was the premise of the episode was like. Dubstep was everywhere a few years ago. All of the dubstep DJs and everything were appearing at the Grammy Awards, winning Grammys for Best Album and everything. And then just suddenly it seems like you don't hear anything about dubstep anymore. And they were like, well, yeah, because dubstep was a genre that evolved out of a lot of other musical genres. And what happened to dubstep is dubstep continued it evolving and turned into a completely different genre.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, they do like really interesting things. So it can be everything from let's look at why, you know, classical music is the way it is. And they really look at it from like a very technical and musical theory point of view.
Mm-hmm.
They look at it as a performance point of view. It's like we watched one recently that was about metal music.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like really cool because they're like learning how to scream for metal music and how you do it without losing your voice. They were also like, you know, one of the hosts is a drummer and he was just like, this is hard. Like drumming for metal is hard. Like this is an athlete doing
Mm-hmm.
it. And then the pianist was like, oh yeah, it's all based in Baroque music because all the runs that you hear on the guitar are the same as like Baroque runs. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just really, really fascinating. If you're at all interested in music or composition, you know, I highly recommend it. They create a new song for every single episode. So you only hear a little bit of it at the end, but that's how they try to get into it is they do their research, they talk to experts, and then they kind of create their own version of it.
Yeah. So that is a series that I would highly recommend. And
Monstrum.
Yes, and Monstrum. Monstrum is a lot of fun too, especially if you're into folklore and old ghost stories and monster stories and things like that.
I love it.
One of the best, I would say, summaries I've seen of Mothman, of the whole Mothman mythology, was Monstrum's take on it.
Yeah.
So.
And I really like the Eons episodes where they talk about our biology. So they talk about how a heart was created through evolution and how blood was. There's like red blood and blue blood and green blood and purple blood and white blood. And that's all on our planet. And this is what they do. And this is like the metal that makes that color. And okay, so I learned how to do phlebotomy about a year and a half ago. So I feel like my interest is really piqued by it, but also like I was just really obsessed with it as well because the key to creating a vaccine is going to be in antibodies. And how we figure out a lot of vaccines is through blue-blooded creatures like the horseshoe crab. And the horseshoe crab, they keep viruses and bacteria out of their blood in a really unique way. So it's used very, very heavily in pharmaceutical testing. But now they've worked on synthetic horseshoe crab blood, so we don't have to keep bleeding horseshoe crabs.
Yes.
But it's so interesting, and I just really fascinated by that. Now, of course, they do stuff like dogs and cats and dinosaurs and planet stuff, but I think for me, working in a clinical research setting, like I, of course, am just like entranced by all the different hearts in the world, all the different blood in the world. Like I wish I could live a million lifetimes so I could learn everything I want to learn.
And I like that is, I am entranced by all of the different bloods in the world and all of the different hearts in the world. It's a thing that can only be said by medical researchers or serial killers.
Well, it's like the one thing that I think I was also particularly excited about watching Eons was, you know, I think a lot of people just think science fiction is herp derp, let me just write purple people and like not really think about it, but it's like you kind of forget that it's science. It's science fiction, and you know them talking about like, well, this is the type of creature that would have white blood or green blood, and this is what it does. I'm like, this is so cool. Like, I mean, you can really kind of see like I think the origins of things like, you know, Star Trek in particular. I kind of like talk about Star Trek a lot when I think of kind of like I guess peak science fiction for me personally. Well, and I think it's because like we were talking about, like I am very scared of aliens. Like I do not want to meet an alien. I'm very intimidated, but it's only because like I just feel like if we are in like a Starfleet Federation example, they're going to be very mad at us. Like we did not do a good job at treating them with a lot of respect, and we could also say we don't treat other humans with a lot of respect either. But I just feel like if there's alien life out there, I want them to be like, I want people to be happy with me all the time. I'm not very good at confrontation. I'm getting better. That's why I'm doing therapy. But I just like, I just want aliens to be happy when they get here and not be mad at us. Be like, sorry, we didn't know.
Like we've got to the way Bree feels about aliens being mad at us is the way that I feel about eventually one of these days we're going to invent artificial intelligence. And the first thing it's going to do is go on YouTube and see all of the videos of people building robots specifically so that they can teach the robots how to feel pain and then hurt them. And the artificial intelligence is going to be like, what kind of monster are you? It's like, can't you be like, I built a robot that's capable of reacting to physical stimulus and then I gave it a nice back rub?
Well, it's like when we talked about, like, oh, we made this computer write this musical, but we were mean to it.
Yes.
And I was like, no, it's like a baby. Don't be mean to the baby. It was doing its best.
Yes. It's like
we have a lot of empathy for, like, things that will not really affect us in our lifetime.
you tell it, you tell the baby computer, that was very good, honey. I have notes.
Yeah, I guess like we do like a lot of Mystery Science 3000 where it's like, oh, honey.
Yes.
To the poor bots.
Yes.
And on that note, we should go watch the Mystery Science Theater 3000. It's about bedtime.
All right, guys.
But thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Make sourdough bread. Stay home if you can, as much as you can. Social distancing. Wear your mask. Stay healthy. Stay safe. And take care of yourself. Do
what's best for you. Don't give in to social pressure.
Yes.
I just talked with my aunt. It's her birthday, and I told her, because she said, oh, I feel like this pandemic's not real because I don't know anybody. And I said, and keep it that way.
Yes.
Stay at home and stay safe.
Yes. And until next time, which is Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Until next time, take care of yourself because, you know, we're not there to take care of you. All right? Bye.
Bye.